I spent tens of thousands of dollars on moving to Dubai. Nearly 2 years have passed since I arrived to see if it may be a good fit, and I ended up staying. In this video, I'll give you my honest review on this 2-year experiment and potentially save you this money if you're on the fence of moving here. The video is split into 3 parts. First, I'll break down Dubai's biggest trap, a clever game the city plays to attract new people. I got pulled in it too, and it's a big part of why living is harder than you may think. Second, I'll share the real pros, cons and quirks of living here after 2 years. And finally, third, I'll share my opinion on who Dubai is actually right for and who might regret moving here. But before we get into all that, let's start with my story. Why I came here, what I was looking for, and how it all turned out. You probably don't know me yet, so here's a quick intro. My name is Gleb Fedorenko. I'm 24 and for the past 7 years I've been building digital products as a tech entrepreneur. Over the last couple of years I've been running Gold, a boutique full-cycle agency helping businesses to create, launch and scale mobile apps and other digital products. We work with clients across the globe, and last year we were ranked as the #1 cross-platform app developer in the UAE. I came to Dubai in mid-2023, and like most people, I came here with a very specific business goal in mind. For me, it was to go global. At first, I wasn't planning on staying. Dubai was just a stopover. I came here to set up a company, and the original plan was to then move to Paris. But at some point, I stopped myself. I'm building a software agency. Firstly, software in France, really. And second of all, this business relies heavily on my personal network, and to grow that from scratch in France seemed like a pretty hard thing to do. When I looked at it through that lens, Dubai suddenly seemed like a place to be for 2 very clear reasons. Firstly, Dubai's population is pretty diverse. Over 90% of people here are expats, so there's no cultural barrier to overcome or the new language to learn to start operating here. And of course, I'd love to learn new languages and explore other cultures. That just wasn't the most efficient path to my initial goal. The second reason was the ease of moving here, the ease of initial setup, company formation, the visas, residency. It was all so fast and straightforward, especially compared to European bureaucracy. Not quite that simple, but we'll get to that. These were just surface level advantages, but they were enough to tip the scales in Dubai's favor, at least for this stage of my life. Now, let me answer the big question straight away. Did it all work out? The answer is yes. I launched my agency in late 2022, so 2023 was the first proper year of operation. By the end of 2023, almost all of the revenue came from the local clients from my home country. In 2024, by the end of the year, the scales tipped into the favor of international markets. So basically 60% came from the worldwide clients, the international clients. This year, 2025, 90% of the revenue is coming from international clients. I think now we're working with 9 countries. So yes, I achieved what I set out to do. It wasn't easy. It maybe took a bit more time than I anticipated at first, but I managed to pivot the agency to global market and to set up a business that successfully works from here, from the UAE. With that out of the way, let's get to the topic of this video. Earlier, I mentioned Dubai's biggest trap. The city's brilliant strategy to draw new people in. The trap unfolds in 3 stages. Let me walk you through them. Stage 1, the bait. One of the reasons I moved here was how easy it is to relocate. Firstly, citizens of most countries can enter the UAE visa-free and stay for a couple of days or even a couple of months and do the whole process on site in the country with almost zero preparation. Company formation took me like 1 or 2 days, and my personal residency, the residence visa, followed in the next 2 weeks. That first interaction with the system is shockingly fast and simple and relatively affordable. For the whole setup for myself and the company, I spent around $5,000 for government fees. And that's where the genius lies. The ease of the first step makes you believe that everything will be just as smooth going forward. That's when you're hooked. And then comes stage 2, the point of no return. That's where the real investment begins. Investment of your time, energy, and of course, money. Your first challenge would be finding and setting up your first apartment here in Dubai. A few things to consider. First of all of the rental contracts here are long-term. Of course, for the first few weeks or maybe few months, while you're getting set up, getting your residency, you'll find a short-term contract through Airbnb or Blue Ground or any similar platform. But then when you want your place long-term, there is a process, and every contract is 1 year long. And you cannot get out of the contract early without the penalties. How it usually works is the contract is valid for 1 year. If you want to renew it for the second year, you just do nothing. It automatically renews for the second year and then the third and so forth. And if you want to cancel the contract, get out of it and not renew, you need to tell the landlord 3 months before. Maybe you can negotiate 2 months before. But if you want to terminate the contract earlier, let's say you want to live here 6 months a year and you sign for the yearly contract, and then 6 months passes and you want to cancel the contract, terminate the contract, you have to give 2 or 3 months notice to the owner that you're planning to move out and terminating the contract. And you'll also have to pay the fine. It's also negotiable, but usually it is 2 months of the rent. So let's say you want to live here for 6 months, you rent out an apartment for a year, then 6 months passes. On the 3rd month, you tell the landlord that you're not renewing the contract after the 6 months, and then you pay 2 months extra rents. So basically you stay for 6 months and you pay for 8. That's the thing to consider. The second thing to consider here is the upfront costs, which are pretty high. First of all, the apartments are priced annually. So let's say the annual rent is 100,000 AED for the ease of calculations. And 100,000 AED per year would get you a nice-ish 1-bedroom in a decent area like Dubai Hills or Dubai Creek. Basically a family area, but not the prime area like downtown Dubai. So you rent an apartment for 100,000 a year, and then there are multiple payment options. Some landlords insist on paying a year's rent upfront, so 1 check. Some agree to 2 checks, 3 checks, 4 checks, maybe 6 checks or more, but this is less and less common. What I see for my contracts and the contracts of my friends, the common thing is either 1, 2, or maybe 3 or 4 checks. So in the best case scenario for you, you can negotiate payment in 4 parts, 4 checks. So upfront you would need to pay the 3 months rent, the first check, basically a quarter of the year, which is 25,000 AED in this scenario. Then after you pay the rent, you also have to pay the security deposit, which is 5 to 10% of the annual rent. Depends on the property. If it's unfurnished or furnished, it may be lower or higher. And then you need to also pay the agent's fee. It's fixed, it's always there. It's 5% of the annual rent. And then you also pay the deposits for all the utilities you have, the electricity, water, gas, and air conditioning in some buildings. Then when you paid all the fees, the rent, you can proceed to furnishing your apartment. It will likely be unfurnished. However, there are of course some furnished apartments on the market, but usually they are overpriced and it's hard to find something that suits you with a quality furnishing. In most apartments, the kitchen would also be empty, so you'll have to purchase the kitchen appliances like the stove, oven, fridge, etc. And also purchase all of the basic furniture you need, like the sofa, the bed, etc., etc. So the basic cost of moving in is pretty high, because you need to purchase everything for the apartment and you need to pay a lot for the apartment. So here's your first major financial investment in this move, apart from the cost of moving itself and the residency setup, the company setup. Then you'll need a driver's license, because living without a car in Dubai is living on the hard mode. If you are from the European Union or United States, you can probably just exchange your current driving license here for a small fee for a local one. However, it doesn't work for every nation. For example, I as a Russian citizen, my license is not accepted here. I needed to go through the school again and take the exams here. You can also pay for the business package, which allows the school teacher basically to come and pick you up, drive in a nice-ish car, like for me it was a Mercedes C-Class, in your neighborhood, and then take the exam also in your neighborhood and be done with this process in like 1 to 2 weeks. But that will cost you around $5,000 US. Then of course you need a car. You can buy it, lease it, rent it. There are a lot of options for basically any budget, so we won't be including this into your moving expenses, because you can literally rent a car for 2,000 AED per month, which is roughly $500-600, or you can buy something crazy, you can lease it. That's totally up to you, but you'll need some kind of car, because getting around here on a taxi would be, first of all, expensive. Second of all, not really comfortable, because to be efficient in the city, you have to know the ways, the ins and outs of every place, the great parking spots, etc., etc. And the taxi drivers usually don't know them. So it would be much quicker to drive yourself or to have a permanent driver here. Then, of course, you need a bank account here. Personal banking is pretty easy, and the banks are decent compared to European ones, let's say. And there is a digital bank called Vio, which is a local version of Revolut, a great app, digital bank, no branches, no offices, but it's licensed by the Central Bank of the UAE and partially owned of the First Abu Dhabi Bank, which is one of the largest banks in the UAE, so it's considered pretty safe. You can get a personal account in a few minutes through the app in the Via, or you can go to one of the old school banks and also get your personal accounts in maybe a few hours to a few days. Business banking isn't that easy. At least it wasn't that easy for me. It also depends on your nationality. If you're applying with a European passport, it also will be easier for you to do a business account in Via or any other bank. It would take maybe a few hours to a few days to get approved and have your business bank account. But for certain nationalities like Russians or many other, there's an extra due diligence process you'll need to pass. So opening a corporate bank account may take some time. For me, it was almost half a year, and for many of my friends with similar passports situation, half a year is common. So by this point you've spent months here, burned through quite a bit of cash. So for me it was around 30,000 US dollars to get settled in, not counting the everyday expenses and my first rental properties for the first 2 months here while I was setting up. And I also spent around $45,000 on a car. So for me, the total was around 75 if you count that. And you've poured, and I've poured a ton of energy into building this new life here. Meanwhile, you start to question things and look at the downsides. Dubai isn't really walkable. You start to miss the beauty, the old cafes, European streets, late night strolls. You ask yourself a question at a certain point. Did I make the right call? But you've already committed. The sunk cost is real, and most people aren't willing to go through second relocation straight away, which leads to stage 3, the comfort paradox. You build your circle, you discover your favorite spots, and you build routines. And most importantly, you start to genuinely appreciate the upsides of being here. And that's when living becomes truly difficult, even if the downsides are still there. That's the Dubai trap. I already briefly touched on a couple of pros, like multiculturalism or how easy it is to move here. But surprisingly, those aren't even the most important ones. First and foremost, safety. This is something people tend to underestimate until they experience it. Dubai feels extremely safe, especially compared to some Western European cities. You can walk alone at night, your girlfriend can walk alone at night, nothing would ever happen. You can leave your phone on the table and not worry. This peace of mind is priceless. Then of course there's the taxes, or rather absence of them. Zero capital gains tax, zero personal income tax. There's a 9% corporate tax on the earnings above 100,000 US dollars per year, but if you qualify for the small business relief, which is if you have revenue under 3 million AED per year, which is roughly 816,000 US dollars per year, you do not pay any corporate tax either. So if you're a high earner and you're coming from a high tax country, this alone could be life-changing. And it's not even about having extra money to spend. It's about how faster you can achieve your financial goals and financial freedom. Let's say instead of giving 50% of your income in all sorts of taxes to the government, let's say in the UK, you just invest this same amount. How much faster would you build your wealth? The next one is everyday comfort. The convenience of living here is genuinely really high. Even mid-range buildings and apartments come with a dedicated gym, pool, and a parking space for your apartment. Getting around is easy. The infrastructure is built around cars, at least for now, so you have to drive one. But if you don't need to commute to an office every day during rush hour, the traffic otherwise is pretty good, pretty light, and you can get around really fast because there are almost no traffic lights. And almost every commute looks like you're coming from point A to one of the 3 main big roads. You drive on this big road for 10, 15, 20 kilometers, and then you exit this road to your point B with 0 traffic lights. So places can be far away, but the speed limit is pretty high. Usually it's 100 to 120 kilometers per hour. You get everywhere within 15 to 30 minutes, even if it's 2 separate ends of the city. Plus, everyday life is incredibly convenient. First of all, everything can be delivered to your door. It can be food, groceries, or let's say an iPhone, and it will probably be at your door 24/7 within a few minutes or maybe a few hours if it's something rare. You can find any food you like, any cuisine, any price point, and the food likely would be made by the people from that country, from that culture, who moved here to work and grow their businesses, restaurants here. You can find the best gyms, and overall the fitness of the population here is pretty high, and it's much more likely to see a person running or lifting weights than person doing some self-destruction like drinking or smoking here on the street, let's say. Things just work. Finally, the people. Dubai attracts winners. The people who want more from life, who are focused, determined, and ready to work for it. There's a healthy sense of ambition and even competition. And being in that environment naturally keeps you sharp. At the same time, I wouldn't pretend that the city got the perfect reputation. It's true that Dubai became a magnet for all sorts, including some shady characters like the crypto bros or get-rich-quick types. But the people I usually come across are genuinely inspiring, kind, hardworking, and deeply committed to what they're building. If you're in the right circles, the quality of network here can be absolutely game-changing. And also Dubai acts like a global hub. It's located literally in the center between the east and the west, and almost everyone you would want to meet eventually passes through at least once a year. Now let's talk downsides. Most of them I think are forgivable or at least understandable. Keep in mind that the country is only about 50 years old, and not so long ago there was nothing but desert here. The progress they've already made is pretty impressive, and what's also important is to look at the future and to look at the trend. And with currently many places in the world basically becoming third world, the future of the UAE looks pretty bright to me. But still there are frustrating things, at least worth mentioning, and how important they are for you only you can decide later. The first is lack of history, or you can rather say lack of aesthetics here. And what I mean by that is everything you see around you day to day. The buildings, the streets, everything is quite new and quite modern. So you don't have this historical streets and the energy you can feel in many cities like Paris or Milan. Some people call the city soulless because of that, because it's all new, it's all skyscrapers and the big roads. And I wouldn't agree that it's soulless, but you'll definitely have to invest some time to find your definition of the soul here. And many of these places which are modern are already 15 to 25 years old, and this is the era when they were building like crazy, and they still are, and the quality of these buildings aren't always on the best level, and the looks of them aren't too. So many of these areas aren't pleasant to be in, to look at, and yeah, you'll have to find these bits of aesthetics here. Of course, there are some beautiful areas, beautiful buildings, but overall, there's no single aesthetic for the city. There are a lot of areas that just don't look pretty. You have industrial areas, you still have a lot of sand and construction going on, so you'll have to find the places you like, and aesthetics exists for now in this oasis of the beautiful places, but I wouldn't call the whole place beautiful for now. Also, with the lack of history and multiculturalism here, you see a lot of new money people with at least questionable taste. You can see gold-plated, gold-wrapped cars, you can see a lot of monogram logo brands on people's clothes, and the whole Mansory car aesthetics, the Lamborghinis, all that stuff. It's a bit a lot, and it's usually not so pleasant to look at. But of course, there are beautiful people, beautifully dressed people, there are of course beautiful buildings, and there is taste here. But there's also that other part of the flashy displays of wealth that I'm not a big fan of. The second con is construction quality. Because they are building that fast, they are reusing the floor plans, the materials, etc, etc. That's why the most buildings here look pretty much the same. You'll have basically a selection of a few similar floor plans, and inside you'll have the same materials, and they of course prioritize the speed of building here right now. They can build a huge 50-60 floor building in like 2-3 years, which is crazy fast compared to most countries. And that leads to the quality of these buildings is moderate. So what you'll usually get is white walls, tiles everywhere on the floor, and really badly built kitchen with either no appliances or some appliances. Let's say for me in this apartment I have the nice-ish kitchen, but when you look at the details, it's pretty poor build quality here. And the tiles is the thing I hate the most about the buildings here, because if you are coming from Europe and you're used to wooden floors, you're trying to find an apartment with wooden floors, it's almost impossible here. Basically, there are 3 areas in the city where developer used wooden floors, and if you are not willing to live in one of them, and all of them are quite expensive, your only option is to either renovate the apartment yourself or to look for an apartment that was already renovated. And besides finishes being pretty basic, the construction of the internal parts of the building can also be a bit problematic because it's all building so fast and the labor used is not always so skilled. There probably will be problems with the AC or gas or plumbing or anything that you'll need to fix when you move in if the building is new. For example, this building I moved when it was new. AC broke 3 times, there was problem with the stove, there was problem with the plumbing, and you'll have to deal with it. Even though the apartments are usually with warranty, so the fixes are free and the team is coming from the developer or from the property management, but you'll still have to deal with it. The third con is nature, or rather lack of it. And of course Dubai is trying hard. Dubai is becoming greener every year, and even living here for 2 years I can see the changes. They are planting more trees, putting more grass, but there is just a limit, at least for now, of what they can do. And for me and many people who are used to forests, trees and lakes and all that stuff, you just won't find it here. Of course, there's still nature. It's still beautiful, but it's different. You have the Hatta Dam with the artificial lake and the mountains. You have the Jebel Jess mountains. You have the beautiful desert, but you still miss the nature you're used to. The lakes, the mountains, the forest, etc. And there's not much you can do. The fourth con is distance. For me, it's distance from Europe, but that's largely subjective and that really depends on where your interests lie. For me, many of my friends, many of my trips are in Europe, and Dubai is pretty far from Europe. Let's say Dubai to Milano is 6.5 hour flight, Dubai to Paris is 7.5 hour flight, Dubai to London is like 8 hour flight, and it's a lot. Then you have the borders, you have to cross the border here, which is pretty fast, then you have to cross the border in Europe, which is not usually that fast, and their total trip is like 10 hours one way. So you'll miss out on a lot of short, fun weekend trips that you can do in Europe easily with a half an hour flight, an hour flight or train, a lot of other options to travel fast and cheap. Here, even if you can afford to pay for the business class flights and make that experience a bit better for yourself, I tried that a couple of times, but still you are exhausted after the trip when you arrive at the destination and when you arrive back. So now I find myself usually skipping this short 2 to 5 days trip because it's not worth the hustle. And if I were located in Europe, I of course would go on such a trip. I wouldn't say that it's a separate con, it's also part of the nature and the distance. I do really enjoy road trips by car, and here aren't many places to go by car. You are of course always driving in the city, but it's not fun. It's straight roads, strict speed limits, and there are no mountains except Jebel Jess, and there is nowhere you can go by car. You can drive through the desert for 700 kilometers to reach Qatar, the Doha, the capital of Qatar. You can drive a bit longer to reach Saudi Arabia, but the landscape is pretty similar. There just isn't any road trip worth doing. For me, that's also a con. Now we're moving into the category of quirks. I wouldn't say that these are pros or cons because they are subjective, or they fall into both categories. The first quirk is climate. Half of the year the climate is a pro, and half of the year the climate is, in my opinion, a con. What it looks like is you have really nice comfortable weather starting mid-October, maybe November for some people. It doesn't feel too hot. It's like 25, 27, maybe a bit lower degrees in the daytime, 20 or below in the nighttime. And you have this beautiful summer weather in winter, starting November and then going through maybe late April or early May. Then it starts getting hotter. The May is still pretty good in my opinion, but the summer is hard. For example, now it's mid-June, 16th of June on the time of recording this video, and it's 40 degrees outside today. It was pretty okay in the morning. It was around 32, still walkable, but in the daytime it's not walkable, it's not pleasant. Of course you can do it, but you wouldn't want to do it. There are a lot of things they are doing for the city to be more comfortable in the summertime. You have basically air conditioning in your home, you have air conditioning in any place you would go. You go by car, that is also air conditioning. But if you like walking, if you like to get around by foot, it's almost impossible in the summer, or you'll be sweating in 5 minutes after you leave your home. And also part of that quirk is that you start to miss the seasons changing here. It's always summer. It's I think 362 or 3 sunny days per year. So you don't need to think about the weather. It's always the same. You look out the window, it's sunny, it's bright, and it's pretty hot. You start to lose the sense of time because you don't see the seasons changing. The second quirk is air quality, because the air quality outdoors is definitely a con. It's pretty bad almost at all times, but it's a quirk because the air quality indoors in most buildings is superb. For me, I have a lot of sensors in the apartment measuring all kinds of air quality metrics, and it's always in the green, it's always excellent. However, if you spend time outdoors, it's just not healthy for you, especially if you're doing outdoor sports for a prolonged period of time. The outdoor air quality isn't that good. It's sometimes better, sometimes worse, but I've never seen it being in the green. It's at best at moderate level, comparable with other cities, and at worst it's in a danger zone. However, when I got concerned with that issue, I started to compare Dubai to other major cities in terms of air quality, and I was quite surprised that in many places the situation is, if not worse, then on the same level as Dubai. Let's say Milano, Italy, which you may think will have better air quality than Dubai, is actually on the same level or sometimes worse. So look at the IQ Air map and check the air quality in the place you live, and then you can compare it. Of course, there are places with better air quality in terms of major cities. I think Paris is doing a good job, that Zurich is doing a good job. You have far superior air quality there, but there are also a lot of popular places that we don't think of as places with poor air quality. The third quirk is cost of living, and it's a quirk because I don't know where you are coming from. Coming from Moscow, Russia, of course Dubai is more expensive. I think it's around 2 times more expensive. Coming from London, Dubai is on the same, pretty much the same level. Coming from Switzerland, Dubai is cheaper than Switzerland. Coming from the United States, let's say an expensive city like San Francisco, Dubai will probably be a lot cheaper. So the cost of living really depends on where you are moving from, and it also depends on taxes. So if you are moving from a high tax country, you are instantly earning, let's say, 2 times more if you are a high earner, and the difference in cost of living between Dubai and a cheaper place probably will be cancelled out by the taxes you don't pay here. But if you are considering moving here or moving, let's say, to Malaysia, it will be, of course, cheaper to live in Malaysia, not here. But I think Singapore, Hong Kong will be on the same or even more pricier level than Dubai. Now we are moving on to the final part. Who should consider moving here? The first portrait, I think, is an early stage entrepreneur. If you already have a working business, if you have a specific business goal you want to achieve, and you see how Dubai may benefit you, and you have sufficient means, I would say that you have to have a bit of savings to do the move, basically at least 30 to 50,000 US dollars to be comfortable. And then you have to have an income. The level of income you need to have before moving, of course, largely depends on your lifestyle. I would say that for one, if you are earning above $5,000 to $6,000, you can be pretty comfortable here. However, I wouldn't say that if you are earning even 5,000 to 10,000 US dollars, it's worth moving here if you don't see how UAE can benefit you besides taxes, because everything you save on taxes you will probably spend in cost of living. And now we are transitioning to the second portrait, is a more established entrepreneur. If you already have a sufficient income, let's say 30, 50, 100k a month, or even a bit less, I would say from 15 to 20k a month, you start to optimize your taxes and you also get the benefits of Dubai, all I mentioned above. The third portrait of a person who might move here is a high earning employee. I know a few cases, even in my friend circle, of people moving here to work for a big company. They are transferred from, let's say, UK offices or European offices, and the salary difference because of the taxes is significant. People who moved here from London are basically earning twice as much while spending less than they spend in London. So if you're a high earner, even if you're an employee, it might still be worth it. And of course, there are some more categories of people who might move here because of the pros I mentioned above. Who shouldn't move here? First of all, if you are making less than, I would say, 100,000 US dollars per year, you of course might move here and you can live on 50 and you can even live on 30 or 40 probably, but that wouldn't probably be a most comfortable life and you wouldn't get as much benefits. Of course, you wouldn't get the tax benefits if you are not earning at least 100k a year. I would even say more to get the tax benefits, but I would say that 100k a year or like 8 to 9k per month is the threshold when you can consider if you are potentially going to be earning a lot more in the future. At this stage, you might start to prepare your move to Dubai. If you want quiet and peaceful life, there are far better places than Dubai. Here, everyone comes for a reason. And if you just want calm, peaceful, quiet life, probably European lifestyle or some Asian lifestyles are far better suited for your case. And also, if you just want to come here for the sake of coming here without specific goal to achieve, to accomplish, I would say it won't work without a plan. And finally, will I move out of Dubai? And the answer is, I don't know. As I said, there is a Dubai trap and I got caught in it too.